So I think we are waking up to the fact that it's either all of us or none of us. My perspective is it becomes with the individuation, with becoming a true individual, with your own personal revolution, your personal evolution, because the effect that creates, yes, maybe it affects much smaller circle, your immediate circle, but there is always a ripple effect.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Hour podcast, where we explore the minds and the worlds of visionary artists and creators. This week's episode is with Sundari Sera from Istanbul, and we discuss things such as rites of passage and how she created this vision called Rites Roses by merging matter and spirit together. We also discuss how individual change is necessary for collective transformation. So you won't want to miss this episode. On another note, here's more about her personal practice. So she is a transdisciplinary artist, mystic, writer, esotericist, and guide, and comes from a background in linguistics, literature, humanities, and performing arts. She has had many artistic and healing practices for almost 2 decades, such as alchemy, astrology, and tarot, Eastern disciplines of Tantra and yoga, and psychotherapeutic practices of systematic constellations and art therapy. Since 2017, she's been supporting individuals and groups on the path of self-knowledge and liberation. And as of February 2024, she launched Rites Roses, an unfolding project in service to the paradigm shift and collective liberation. So let's jump right in. Welcome, Sundari Sera. Thank you for coming on this improvised set that we've just created.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this podcast. I can introduce you by saying that we have a spiritual friend that kind of somehow merged the connection. You Biving that we both follow, we encountered each other through this friend, and seems like what the theme of this encounter is the rose, because you also have a project that you recently started called Rites Roses.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So, welcome, first of all.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe this project is your new baby. It's something you've recently birthed. It's, of course, a culmination of all the rest of the things you did before, but what is it for, in your own words, that I know you do one-on-one sessions, there's different avenues that you're exploring as well. Yeah. What does it represent for you?
Yeah, I think I actually just wanted to have a space for myself and hopefully for other people who are, let's say, like-minded and like-hearted to kind of have this experience of the oneness of the matter and the spirit, let's say. So actually it would be the wholeness, the totality of everything, because we tend to think in these terms, but in truth, there is no such separations. So I think I wanted to have Rites Roses as kind of as a testimony of that through different mediums that I work with, that I've been working with for like 2 decades, but I would actually say since the beginning. So I wanted all these different mediums to come together in more kind of, let's say, experimental ways, because apparently it is still something that's evolving. And I want it to be actually in that way, because it also, I think it reflects my own nature, and also it reflects the nature itself.
Yeah. It feels also with the pandemic and the kind of times we lived in the past few years that forced us to slow down. A lot of
people, including me, have felt the need to reevaluate like everything they are, like everything they've been doing. What is it for? So it feels like it's a kind of it's this kind of creation where you're focusing like all your skills, everything you stand for, but making it into your unique soul project, and in a way that can contribute somehow to the chaos in the world, like to add some peace or some order. Would you say that's
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think what you're describing by saying like adding to peace or order in the chaos is actually a pretty obvious definition of what art is in my perspective and in my experience. So it's what the artist does, basically, you know, like deriving harmony from the chaos. So playing with both sides, but bringing more beauty amidst chaos, and also revealing truth. So it's something beautiful and it's something truthful for me. So I wanted to, of course, like share it, because I know that I am not alone in this. And, you know, I wanted it to kind of be a project or a space that can also bring in different people from different disciplines, but who have sort of a same vision, a similar vision, who are looking at the same direction, maybe. It's kind of a playground, but it's also something very sacred in my heart. And as its name also denotes, like rites and roses, they're of course representatives of matter and spirit in different ways. You know that rose is a really, it's a very important and used symbol throughout different cultures and spiritual teachings, or I would say by all sorts of mystics in the world. But it's also a materialized symbol, a materialized object. It's a plant, after all. It's grounded. And for the rites, it's also, when we think about, I think, rites and rites of passages and rituals and ceremonies, we are a little bit conditioned about these subjects because of whatever culture we are coming from, or some religious teachings. But in fact, how I see it is all this experience, all this human experience, and also everything that reflects our human experience. So, for example, I work with astrology and symbols. So they are bodies which are inhuman, but they reflect our experiences. And all of these are kind of, I think we all go through this process of constant rites and rituals. Life itself is a kind of rites of passage, birth itself. We start with that. And then throughout life, there, one rite of passage after another, one after another. And in nature, it's the same. One season comes, and then it ends, and the other one comes, and it's the morning, it's the evening, it's the night, and different life cycles. They're all different passages, different rites, actually. Just because we are not so much aware of that anymore, it doesn't mean that it's not playing out. So I think it really brings more consciousness and meaning into our lives to be aware of these different cycles of ourselves, of nature, in the sky,
Question, why do you think that these rites in the first place, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, but why do you think we slowly got separated from this, which was normal and natural, like prehistoric man? Well, they would look at the stars and they would look at these things that would bring them food. The light of the day would bring them food, and it would be more sacred. Why do you think over time we lost this connection?
Yeah, I think it's the same reason why we got so disconnected from the nature. Why we've been made forgotten the systems like astrology. No, it's, I think, the same reason, which is ritual or these rites of passages. They are really markers of the different phases in life, which are very consciously, acknowledged by, not just by the individual, but by the community together. So it creates an experience of togetherness and oneness, and also kind of putting a cycle into a context of, let's say, celebration or coming together. So making it special, kind of more extraordinary than just,
more
an ordinary day. It helps to create this shift in the psyche. So let's say birth. A woman gives birth. It's one of the most natural things, happens to many people. And so in many ancient cultures, there are special rites for these type of events, where the community gathers and according to their own culture, according to their own traditions, they do some rituals, maybe some dance, maybe some food, maybe some offerings. For the woman who gives birth, this is something that helps this woman to carry this archetypal shift from maiden to mother, from her unconscious and subconscious layers to her consciousness. And for the community, it's the welcoming of a new life, which will, of course, affect the dynamics of the community, and also celebrating life and also celebrating death, because at this moment, there is a shift in the woman. She is dying to one of her archetypes, which was the maiden, maybe, and then reborning as a mother. So she is actually a renewed member, actually. Okay. So there are different dynamics. We left these practices throughout the years because there is, the modern society is so much kind of constructed around standardization, I would say. And because these kind of rituals and ceremonies, they're of course connected directly with the cycles of nature itself, some natural events. So I think it's kind of part of this disconnecting humanity from what makes them as individuals and also as local communities, but eventually as a bigger organism, which is the humanity itself, kind of separating it from their own power, their own tools of shifts in consciousness and alignment with what is true and what is beautiful.
You talk a lot about the feminine cycles, and I think that's definitely like one that's feels like it's the most far apart from the more disconnection.
Yeah.
What do you think that it affects also like masculine rituals? And if yes, like, do you like which one, for example?
I mean, I am not, to be honest, I'm not specifically studying or working on these rituals like as they appear in different cultures or traditions. It's just a reference point, but doesn't matter if it is a woman, if it is a man. I think, these feminine rituals comes into mind more easily because my main reference point is the nature itself, which is the biggest feminine force, the earth itself. But also, of course, for man, for every human being, actually, from childhood to adolescence, this is a passage. And then maybe marriage, two people's kind of commitment to opposites, creating a one unit. This is a passage. Of course, in the past, people had different lives from what we live in today. People used to go to wars, or, used to go to bigger explorations in the world, expeditures and pilgrimages and this kind of things. So these were all sort of different stages for a man as well in their lives.
And with Rites and Roses, do you, like through discussion with your clients, is it something that you do? Is it helping them reconnect with those rites and re-understand the reason why you would want to do it too? Is that something you do?
Yeah, it is something symbolic. It's not really too literal. I mean, now I am giving some literal examples of rites and rituals, but just to make it clear where the roots are.
Yeah.
But in my work with people, of course, I work mostly with astrology. This is, this is my main tool, let's say. And astrology itself is the study of cycles and passages. So, every phase, every transit that we observe in astrology, they are different, they are denoting different aspects of our kind of psyche or our external life as well. So these are these are the tools I think I'm mostly trying to help people with understanding in their lives, like how their life cycles might be affecting them and how they can make it conscious and how they can consciously participate in their own life by becoming more aware of these cycles. Because when we do that, then we become really the co-creators. We are not operating from the autopilot, but we can really intentionally and consciously open a space for reflection and contemplation. This is how I work with it.
And there's a big writing component. I think that's a big part of how you express yourself too, and through your own art, there's a lot of writing. And that's another aspect of what you do with Rites and Roses.
Yeah.
But what is your main inspiration for these texts? Like, where do they come from?
To be honest, they just come.
You just channel them.
I've been writing since the day I learned how to write. I received some backlash from my mother, I remember, because, my grandmother taught me how to read and write. And then during the day, I would be alone with my grandmother. My mother would be working, and I would just grab some of her books and write on them. But this is what not what you do with books. So then when she realized this, she would be like, but yeah, I started to have a writing practice. Of course, I wasn't so aware of it, but just it happened naturally at a very young age. So I was writing poetry around 8 years old already. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's related to my own life experience. I've been always very sensitive and open and kind of very observant. What I was perceiving even as a child from my environment, and I grew up in a pretty dramatic household, I would say. So it was a bit tough on me, and it was really difficult to communicate what I was really feeling, because these feelings and these inner experiences were somehow they were somehow above me, I remember some of the lines that I wrote as a child. I mean, when I look back, it doesn't feel like a child wrote them. So it was both an attempt to express myself, because I was not able to do it with the people in my actual environment. Yeah, there was so much energy, so much emotion that I just had to put somewhere. It wasn't just writing. I was also acting. I was also, creating some different stuff and dancing and, putting on costumes and things like that. So however I just could express myself, I did it. But writing, it has a very different frequency. It has a very specific frequency. It's very different from speaking as well. It requires so much solitude. And I think I've been always drawn to that from childhood, because I felt like I didn't really have space for myself, and I didn't have a room for myself for so long. I would just lock myself into bathroom just to have some time for myself, but then someone would come and
so it
knock
has
the
become
door.
like one of your rituals in a sense.
Yeah,
your own personal ritual.
Exactly. Yeah.
To almost like feel into these intangible things, like being sensitive. When I don't know, for me growing up, emotions were like such a mystery. What are they? Like, what's their purpose? I was trying to figure it out. I can imagine, like, if you're hypersensitive and you're feeling a lot of things, like, you want to understand them, and then the ritual of writing it is like putting up a mirror so you can see, like, in words, something that's intangible. Give it, like, a symbolic form, like every letter becomes these little symbols that add up into ideas and, a way of painting your intuitions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how this, like Rites and Roses, and now, like, you were forced into creating your own rituals out of necessity.
Yes.
And now it's become like something that you want to share with the world, with like your Rites and Roses. I'm curious, like, it feels like from what you've described, you started from like the more personal, like doing things to learn about yourself and to express yourself. And now recently with Rites and Roses, like you want to kind of share and connect people, make them understand, empower people. It seems like the journey from, something bigger than you. In this sense, why do you think it's so necessary, or if you think it's necessary in this day and age? Like, in my own personal work, I feel like that's what's missing in the world, is this kind of doing something for something bigger than you, something that can serve others. I mean, there was always service jobs, like you work in a hospital and this and that. Yeah. There's always this. But at the end of the day, the jobs that are accessible is to make money, and because you make money, it also makes money to someone else. It fits in the consumer, like it
into
feels
the system.
into the system, and it feels like something new is coming. And if you have any insights on, like, because I know you studied that a lot too, communities and stuff, something that needs to happen for this connection to come, like from your observations, or
I'm not sure if I get the question.
It feels like everyone, they're doing what they're doing to serve their ego, because they need money to pay for food for their children, for this, for that.
Okay.
But I'm sensing that there is a shift that needs to happen, where, like, yes, you do it for money to do this, but it needs also to have the awareness of how it can serve others, like what you produce.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of this model requires kind of a whole new system, because it doesn't work right now. Like it seems like the age of Aquarius is promising this, like, individualism, but for the collective. I don't know. Is it something you've thought about, like, or?
I mean, this is, I think, how it's been evolved for me personally as well. I think it really starts with being a true individual, because we've seen throughout the history that it's really difficult to create sustainable changes in the collective. You can revolt, you can bring some sort of revolution to the external system, but it is very difficult to sustain it, because the individuals make up this whole. And if this shift, if this revolution, systemic revolution, doesn't have a sort of correspondence in the individual consciousness, then it is really difficult to sustain it. So I think this is one of the biggest issues in the world right now, from all sort of angles, from political angle, from, ecological angle, whatever you call it. It's sustainability. We come to realize that this system that we are in is not sustainable, and it is falling upon us.
Mm-hmm.
So people are waking up to the fact that running after just personal ambitions and their own personal comforts and status quo is not enough, because they're still unfulfilled, and they keep on chasing the dragons. And even if they save themselves at the end of the day, there's still a lot of suffering going on around, and you still get affected. I mean, you can't isolate yourself. We are all connected. We are all part of the, same thing. You can't just escape forever. You can't just ignore forever. It affects you one way or another. So I think we are waking up to the fact that, it's either all of us or none of us. Mm-hmm. But as I said at the beginning, my perspective is it becomes with the individuation, with becoming a true individual, with your own personal revolution, your personal evolution, because the effect that creates, yes, maybe it affects much smaller circle, your immediate circle, but there is always a ripple effect. Not everyone will be addressing some things to the masses, obviously, but, it doesn't have to be that way. Just start from yourself and then bring the beauty and the truth to where you are. But of course, there is, I think, another facet to that, which is at certain point, it requires coming together with others who are looking at the same direction with you. Because it's really difficult to, I think, maintain and again sustain your own energy, your own service, however you call it, just by being in the giving and serving position. So you have to unite with some others from whom you also get nourished, and you do nourish in a more flowing way. And then you can, again, turn back to your own place or maybe your own community and, go on with your service, sort of. So I think this is how the community starts, actually.
Is that because you have lived for many years on different communities?
Yeah.
You said in Sweden.
I mean, mostly it was in Sweden. I was much more settled there.
Okay.
But I've been and out in different communities and observed, not necessarily lived for, for long periods, but I've been part of different communities. I've been involved with people from many different, lifestyles and backgrounds, and went into their hubs and then popped into the others. So I wasn't so aware of the fact that it was a part of a study when I was younger.
Okay.
But then at some point I certainly became aware of it.
Yeah, you became to watch and observe more from an outsider perspective.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm very fascinated about that, because not a lot of people have the chance to go live in a community and study it, what was your observations of what worked and that you think can be brought to the bigger, that should be integrated in the bigger sphere of communities, and what, from your observation from where you were anyways, did not work?
I mean, of course, this depends on what kind of community, which community, there are different aspects for different communities that worked and didn't work. So it's not very easy to answer this question, I think. It's not really easy, because there were definitely different aspects that worked for one community, but didn't work for the other one.
If you want, just give an example of a specific community you were in, and a bit of context about what they were about and what didn't work.
So maybe I can try to give the example from the community in Sweden, because I was more settled in there. But also this was, there were some practices that I observed in other communities, similar practices. One thing, I think the most important maybe, was coming together in circles.
Okay.
As a daily practice.
That's good or not good?
That's good.
That's good.
That's good. So what it looked like, there were volunteers in the community, so everyone was doing few hours of volunteer work in the community. And then at a certain time, let's say at 3 p.m., everyone would just, stop with their work and then go to their groups, their circles, circles of maybe 4 or 5 people, and have a sharing circle.
Okay.
So everyone would be sitting in a circle with their group, and let's say everyone would have 5 minutes each, where we would be just sharing whatever, while others would be just in a position of receiving, listening, no comments, no judgments, no mimics, no nothing, but completely present. I can speak about my day. I can speak about an inner experience that I'm going through. I can just keep silent. I can spill my guts off. I can say, I just need some massage right now. Can someone? I found this practice very healthy. This is making a conscious and intentional effort and opening an intentional space for receiving everyone in the community as who they are, and just giving a space for this person to express themselves, to be heard, to be seen. So this is how the community, I think, feels more integrated and more truthful with each other. It of course enables open communication as well. So this was a good practice.
And in society for the structure that's now, it would be kind of difficult, but people could do that at work and school.
Yeah, but people don't even talk to each other when they live as 2, 3, 4 people in their own houses, This could be a practice for people, for example. But I think the main point here is creating intentional spaces in different scales for people to express themselves and to be received, to be seen, and to be heard. Because you asked the question at the beginning by mentioning the Aquarius age. The community is one of the most prominent aspects of Aquarius archetype. But we need to see all the archetypes with their opposites as well. So what's the opposite of Aquarius? It's Leo. And Leo is our individual light. It's our self-expression. It's our heart's expression with our whole truth, with our authentic being. So it's not possible to go to Aquarius without passing from Leo. Otherwise, we experience the shadow sides of the archetypes more than the balanced sides, because one side, if the opposite is not integrated, and obviously Leo comes before Aquarius, so it's the foremost, actually. It's the first, in a way.
And there's also a shadow side to shining, and to Leo as well,
of course,
which I feel like is easy to fall in this day and age.
Exactly, but this is exactly how it plays out. We are in the shadow side right now. We are in the see me, love me, look at me, give me attention era right now. But this is how let's say masses wake up through going through the shadow and abusing the shadow aspect, and then kind of get hit by the shallowness of it, by the destructive parts of it. When enough individuals start to suffer from the side effects, then people go like, oh, something is not so right in here.
Yeah.
We gotta try another way. So yeah, we're on that stage.
It feels like that in the world right now. Like people often, it's easy to blame the leaders, because it looks like sometimes leaders in the country, it's like ego wars, like you step over my light, I'm gonna like show you that my light is stronger.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they represent, the collective most of the time.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, it's easy to deflect responsibility.
Yeah.
By just
very easy
shouting out or prosecuting the leaders, instead of looking at your own subtle, like how you're doing this on a smaller scale in your own life.
Yeah.
So like communities, I think, is good for that, because you're exposed to lots of healing modalities and things to see this imbalance.
Yeah.
But I think, unfortunately, there's a specific archetype also that is attracted to go in this type of community, which is just one part of the pie of everyone. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, not everyone wants to. I feel like even people that go to retreat, there's a specific type of people that have this desire to be in group and learn and evolve.
Yeah.
Most people, they just don't want any change to happen. They just want to keep everything the same. And that's also another problem I found. Like, how do you make people want to change without catastrophes hitting their home, and then they have to change? That's that's the tricky part,
This might be, I'm not sure, but this might be a little bit against the nature,
What?
It's like chaos and creation, like destruction and creation, they always follow each other. They're intrinsic, they're kind of within each other.
Mm-hmm.
There is something more important, maybe, than thinking in terms of like how to make it less chaotic, less painful, is can we own our pain? Can we be truthful with our pain? I think this really brings the transformation without necessarily suffering, because suffering in a way is the extension, the extended pain. And why it gets extended? Because we don't acknowledge it on time. We are doing anything and everything in our power to look away. All kind of distractions, all kind of self-numbness, all kinds of exits and escapes are already given by the system. I think we need to learn how to make space in our lives for holding the pain.
Yeah.
And really being with the pain, and really, understanding it. And when I say understand it, not from, like understand with your mind what your pain means, not like that, but really having this self-reflection. That's why rituals are important, I think. That's why solitude is so important. That's why becoming a true individual is important, because if you cannot be alone, you cannot be an individual.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot take the risk of being an outsider, you cannot be an individual. So that's why it's so easy to blame the leaders, this and that, because, it's easy to be in the system whilst thinking that you are actually doing something different. It's very tricky and very easy. But if you are really holding your space enough, opening these kind of spaces for reflection and contemplation enough, being with whatever there is, with the challenge, with the pain, with the joy, with the, this and that, doesn't matter. It's all energy.
Mm-hmm.
Then you learn how to be alone. This is what meditation also teaches us.
True. This
is how we recognize or realize the fact that we are mortal and we will die, and it will be all very alone, in solitude. If we don't practice this enough, our system doesn't really learn this. Our nervous system has to get used to this and understand that there is nothing to fear. If I get misunderstood, if I get, kind of excluded from this or that group or the system by these people, whatever the system you really, subject yourself to, this is where the freedom begins.
Yeah.
Before that, there is no freedom. And no matter in what kind of community you go into, in what kind of retreat you go into, in what kind of workshop, the course, the, technique, teaching, it's all a game. It starts from here. So we have to start from the end, I think. We have to start from the fact that we will die.
Mm.
And so how can I learn how to die so that I don't really fear of getting excluded, getting misunderstood, not being a part of the system, so that I can hold space for real change? Not like,
Yeah, so you can be ready for anything. How did you do it?
How did I do it?
Yeah.
How did I do what?
In your personal life, like, were you always not afraid of any consequences and just kind of embracing the pain? Or did you have to go through some process yourself to learn how to do that? And
in my experience, shock and pain and destruction, they have always been part of my experience, even as a little child. Not self-inflicted, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But in those moments of extreme pain, extreme chaos and destruction, I would go into so much pain. Because, you're a little child, what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, there was also sense of something that loved me eternally. And there was this sense that I was sort of protected, even though I was not protected by the people who were supposed to protect me, which are your parents. And sometimes the destruction and this chaos and pain would be inflicted by the parent.
Yeah.
So of course it was very confusing, but like in the midst of that pain, I would feel that something was holding. Something was calling for not giving up, for, there was something in the future that I didn't know. And I think I've been always so attracted to the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is this happening? And what's coming? What's coming after this? Like, this cannot be for nothing. This much pain cannot be for nothing.
Okay.
I think I had this sense from a very, very early age. And this is still how I see it for the world, because the earth is suffering, the world is suffering, there is so much suffering. I just hope that it's not for nothing, but I also know that it's not for nothing.
Mm.
From my own experience too.
it's not for nothing, and there are tools to, like you say, to not be overly attached to the pain, to help you like separate yourself, and so that it doesn't kind of envahir, like you don't become submerged in the pain, almost like you're underwater drowning and you can't get out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like hope is a good one, like you said. That's something, it can't be for nothing. There must be something that will get recycled, that will come out of it.
Yeah. But sometimes, of course, like we all have different dispositions after all. This is what we also study and see in astrology, through astrology, right? Like which archetypes play more like the main roles in someone's life, and how these energies kind of show the way for the person. So what are the tools for that particular person? And I mean, my tools were, hope, and definitely kind of a very mischievous zest for life.
Okay.
And a lot of courage.
Writing, maybe?
Lots of courage.
Was writing a tool that you had to help you process? And
writing and reading, and school helped me a lot. School helped me a lot because it was giving me a space to get out of that environment.
Right.
Yeah, I always had really good relationships with my teachers. I've had really good teachers as human beings, not just a good teacher as a pedagogist, but like good human being. Yeah. I felt really kind of cared for by them as well. So that gave me lots of strength also. It was a good space. So of course, what do you do in school? You read and you write, right? It's a beautiful experience. I mean, I'm not talking about the school system.
In general.
Don't get me wrong. But being a student, being an apprentice, they are so important, I think, for any kind of role we play in life, through whichever role we serve. Studentship and apprenticeship, discipleship, these are, I think, really, really, they're paramount, I would say.
They what?
They're paramount. They're really
important.
Important, okay. Yeah.
Do you mean to become one, or to acknowledge these roles in yourself, or what do you mean, like they're important?
So you are interested in the occult traditions as well, like occult teachings and how these things work. Because also in the occult traditions, for example, it is, it's always through literacy. So it's always through writing and reading, you actually get initiated, especially if a lineage is broken. So if you're not coming from any tradition, if you're all alone, then this is how you go into the knowledge. But when I say knowledge, I'm talking about not about the information, not about the book knowledge. So writing and reading, they're the main tools of a student, right? But what we see in the for example, educational system is just a tip of the iceberg. Like it's just very scratching the surface of what actually study is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's why the knowledge or the information we get through this kind of study generally doesn't serve to anything, doesn't serve to truth. It serves to system, of course. And it's actually, it's more suppressing than expanding. It's keeping you smaller and limited rather than liberating you. So it's a very different kind of studying and different sort of studentship or apprenticeship or discipleship that I'm talking. And of course, there are also, archetypal experiences. It's not like you gotta be student of someone or something necessarily, but having this archetype, being the student of life, being the student of life.
But in general, like you're saying, it would be important for this to become more known and acknowledged, like in the public, to know that it's a thing, because I mean, this type of apprenticeship or, this kind of knowledge that very different from the schooling system, was usually very elite, it was not for everyone.
Yeah.
It would only be if you have a calling, or a bit later on in time, if you knew someone that was in it. It was not like discipleship, this type of phrasing and of understanding of being a student is not one that was never in the public, I find.
Yeah.
So you think maybe it should become more known, that almost like that you're a human coming in this experience, and this as a fact is like it's a journey to be present with. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but it feels like we just kind of enter this world. We're taken on by our parents, for our teacher, maybe a guardian, and we just kind of never take the time to pause and be like, okay, what's going on? Like, what am I doing here? What happened just before? Where am I going? And I think the act of like stating I'm a disciple or I'm a student of life, this kind of brings you back to like your experience and reinforces what you're doing, like forces you to be more present, more attentive, to study like with awareness all the moving parts of your experience, as to not just be on your deathbed and just blink your last or breathe your last breath and have a flash of like your life that's just kind of just meaningless because you were never present with it.
Yeah.
That's certainly something that like is necessary, but in my perspective it seems like this is there's a lot that has to change, and eventually, like back in, for example, the early Roman times, the elected leaders were these ethical and very high-minded people that were elected for their, the qualities that they bring to the people just by being ethical and having morals and stuff like that. And I think naturally this awareness spreads down from the top down, from these leaders that lead the people. If you have a leader like Trump, for example, that is the example of what to look up to, it's very hard to get into like the body of a disciple that studies life and things like that. So like,
yeah, that's why I'm saying studying. I'm definitely not talking about learning book knowledge. I don't care about that. Literally don't care about that, especially in the age of Google, like where you can find an information in a second.
ChatGPT. That's an old age. Google is old now.
Yeah, whatever. It's rubbish. Like just storing in information and trying to learn something, trying to be more knowledgeable, it's rubbish. We don't need that anymore, definitely. Yeah. So studying is opening oneself up, basically. And as you said, with presence. And then everything becomes a teacher, everything becomes a guru, everything becomes your signpost, basically. If you educate yourself to see, to feel, to hear. So it's about our senses and our, of course, also our mind, training our minds, also about learning about our emotions and feelings, but mostly the senses, because this is how we engage with life mostly, first and foremost. You know, they are much quicker than the mind. They come before the emotions. They are the later experiences, how they get translated. It's first the senses. The body perceives something, takes something in, process something, and kind of sending a signal to the other layers.
Yeah.
That's why studying yourself, studying your different layers. And that's when people will stop looking up to leaders.
Yeah, like I think it's both ways. Like I think this reflects of doing that. If it comes naturally, good, or if it comes from, like you're saying, changing yourself, and then you influence others, and it kind of have a ripple effect. That's one way. And then the reverse of that is, by a miracle, someone that represents this becomes a leader. And then people look up, and then over time, it becomes an example. If your parents don't do that because they're the first teachers you get, well, at least you go out of the family nest and you get another potential influence. And that has more impact than, I don't know, your neighbor. Like, if your neighbor is more, it can happen that it affects you. But if the leader of the country is like that, a lot more chance than the people will feel that.
That's for sure. And hopefully it will happen one day. But, you know, that's why these real systems like astrology, they got erased from people's life.
Yeah.
Because what you learn in astrology, at least, you know, the ancients used to call all these energies, these planetary bodies, as gods.
Mm-hmm.
My perspective is very archetypal, and it's the same, you know, the deities, the gods, the mythological characters, the archetypes, symbols, they're all one. Mm-hmm. They just have different costumes, which is the artistic part of the game, which I enjoy a lot. But we get mirrored by the original idea of something when we look at these archetypes. Mm-hmm. These are our leaders. These are the lights. These are the ideals. So if someone knows this knowledge, this is a kind of knowledge that I'm talking about. If someone needs to learn something necessarily, I think it's this kind of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Because then you have very pure role models.
I feel like, then it becomes like you kind of invoke this force, or not even a force, just like this part of your brain that these archetypes are already in there, but unless you see like a reflection, they're hard to like activate. But if they're like part of society through temples back in the days or stuff like that, then naturally you awaken these teachers within you, and then you have a direct dialogue.
And then you start to see them and notice them in everything and everywhere. Yeah. And then this kind of, I will call puppets, like the leaders, those type of leaders, you know, they're just something.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had I don't have a TV for the last like 14 years of my life. I don't read any newspapers. I'm not getting involved in these things because I'm already always informed by what is going on through different channels. But, you know, it doesn't take anything away from my life. And it actually adds up a lot of hygiene, energetic hygiene. No one needs to look up to these leaders, but of course the collective is not in that level of consciousness yet. People need something, need an example, as you said. They are desperately in search of a mirror for themselves, for their own unrealized parts. That's why, like, awareness is a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility. It's not a walk in the park, for sure. And that's why we need each other, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how more and more people will have a chance to look at a different direction. When we do our work, when we come together, and coming together will kind of enlarge this space. It will make it easier to create this ripple effect in the society and in the collective. So
that's what we're doing with your project.
Yeah,
it feels
hopefully.
Well, I think so. Like a good way you're doing this, I think, is with your weekly text that you write and your astrology reports that you...
The Substack
Yeah.
articles. Yeah. I mean, she's a baby as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. Spreading the word is, I think, good.
Yeah.
It's good.
But that's like in our own individual, in this age of technology, that's the best tool we have, because it can multiply very quickly, bring this awareness. And then the people that really sense a resonance with what you write will come in contact with you to understand on a deeper level. And I think that's the best we can do for now.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a little tricky, I find, because I'm kind of cautious with what I put out there. I put just tiny little part of my own practices at this point, at least, because there's just too many things
on the internet.
Yeah, like everywhere in the market, basically. It's like we have overproduced. And, one part of me was really hesitant with like how to really do this in a maybe different way, because I don't really add up to the pile. This was my feeling, and I just realized that I see that people don't pay attention. People don't have time for this. People don't have energy for this. People don't have space for this. Wow. But this, then I realized, actually maybe it's better that it is like this right now. Because I think, my heart's wish at this point is really coming in touch with the right people. What I put out there and how I put out there can be a bit intense. Can require a lot of, really presence and attention and intention. And a little bit of slowing down and taking your time. So it's not just the product that I put out there, but also how it is received. The process it requires is the most important to me, because process is always more important to me than the product. I don't care about the product that much. I said to myself, okay, most people don't pay attention. Most people are just on the go, just hyped up, and they don't see what's going on. They're just scrolling down and they look, but they don't see. This I said actually make it more possible to find the right people, find people that I would like to come together with at first place, so that we can, we can do something together for maybe bigger scales. I don't have to do it all by myself.
Mm.
So now it is much easier to detect who really pays attention, who are these people, and who are on their own path. It makes it more easier.
Mm.
And
so you're in the role of almost investigation more than like marketing and like, marketing to the masses.
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit tricky thing for a creative, for an artist to, take care of the marketing as well.
Yeah, I know.
There is always a question of integrity. There is a question of energy. Like, it's a lot of work. It's really not so easy. And I have some marketing skills that I used for other organizations in the past. But I don't feel so ambitious with that. Maybe really making the right connections will kind of naturally contribute to the marketing of or the promotion or the distribution. I would call it distribution, not like marketing, but distributing, spreading the word.
Mm-hmm.
This I would like. The rest, little bit of playing the game of the system, just so it's enough.
That's what I feel that's going, like, is the real thing right now. Like, I think you pinpointed it. It's like patience. Like, the world is an extreme transformation, and I think you were right about saying, like, it doesn't need more stuff, more to read, more to this. I think now it's kind of a game of almost surrendering that if your intention is right and you're starting to do the steps personally for yourself, the right people will come, the right people will ask for you to share your things. And the plan is getting orchestrated almost on a spiritual level. Like, the players are being put in place to that's how I envision it. And it's more an experiment of who will be brave enough to trust and like let go of wanting it now.
Yeah, sounds like God's chess play.
It does seem like that.
It is, yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing, like, and thanks for saying that. It really reminds me of myself and my own path. It's like, you want things now and it's not working. You're like, fuck, like, if you need money, like,
Yeah.
But I think it's really that's the game now. It's like the game of connection, interconnection that will, it's not about you anymore. It's not about, it's about something bigger than you that uses whatever your intention put forward. If you are too intentional about being a disciple, about serving, you will be used and you will have people put in your path that are aligned with that intention.
Yeah.
I really believe that that's the future that we're experiencing collectively now. That's what needs to happen anyways. Otherwise, you're just going to fight against a system that is not, the algorithm rewards how much attention you can keep people online on their platform on Instagram. So it's like we're fighting, like the work we do takes time. It takes patience for people to observe it. It's slow. It's deep. It's meaningful.
Yeah.
And if we're fighting against attention, that's all the platforms that value just how much time can you keep people to our platform and suck their energy in. We won't get what we want. But if we work on the opposite within, then we'll get the bigger forces that will use our platforms for placing its pawns for that bigger plan to unfold, that we will become vessels for.
Yeah, it sounds like a computer game. I like it. Maybe these bigger forces are just coming in. Yeah.
The big program.
Yeah, this is the trick that of course so many creatives fell into, because the system made people believe that now they could be the creators and they could be free. And, slow by slow, it turned to a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, so intense.
And even worse, they cannot even create what they really want to create, so that they can, sustain whatever the standard is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit tragic comic, I would say.
Yeah.
But this is how it is. That's why it's not so easy. That's not, things are not as how they seem, really. So much illusion is going on. So it's only if the individual, the person, if they really are anchored within.
Exactly.
There is no other way. Otherwise, the moment the direction changes, you get drifted.
Yeah.
And it will always be like that. And then you can't really, as a creative, as an artist, as a human being, as a human being, you cannot really protect your integrity if you cannot be truthful to yourself, to your own inner process. Then it's very difficult to be truthful to outside as well, and also to handle the truth from the outside. These are all interconnected, just like everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but especially for creatives and artists, because these practices are already very, internally enriching, but also nourished from within to without kind of practices. Even if you get something from without, it gets processed within and then comes out in a way from you, from within you. And the name on it, it's creation, is no different than creating a baby, giving birth to a baby. It doesn't happen overnight. You go through pregnancy for 9 months throughout different phases. And, a plant doesn't just sprout overnight. Everything happens under the soil. Everything happens in the darkness first, in the dark place. The baby is in the womb. The plant is under the soil. The roots are under the soil. But now the system knows this very well. The system is quite intelligent in that sense. Very, very cunning, I would say. Keeping you always kind of plugged in to the outside. It takes away your chance to be with darkness, be in darkness, and go through the real process. So, because otherwise things can get too deep and too, truthful and way too beautiful that people can wake up or something, So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot to, but I think we tapped into something that I think is very valuable for creatives out there, because there are so many people that I know personally. They were just fighting. You're trying to fight this game, like play this game, but you're actually fighting against yourself because I need a bit more time. I have to put more time. I have to post 5 reels, 5 this per day. It's like, but in the end, it feels like the game is changing. Like there's the marketers that are trying to adapt to the robot, the AI, the algorithms. and doing, and it's always shifting. But I think as spiritual creatives, yeah, we have to go within. We have to change the game and access the higher forces than the AI, the algorithms that are programmed by man.
I mean, it doesn't have to be any higher forces than our already natural forces as human beings. Like, if we were not harassed to that point by the system, we come here as very intelligent organisms already. I think it's not really about going higher or this or that. It's about getting deeper to the roots. First of all,
I see them like as just they're opposite. They're kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, all the directions are holding each other for sure. But I think I'm a little bit. It's just that I'm a little bit sensitive with the wordings.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right to mention this because it's not one or the other. It's like they're both the same thing. But if you always name the same one, you forget the other side, which is very important.
Of course, I think wording is important because we have certain lexicology in our minds that is conditioned by seemingly opposite things, which are at the end of the day the same thing. For example, so we are talking about the system and like how the system as it plays out in the material world, right? But then if we put the opposite point as like something as if so separate from our humanness, from our natural state, then this also becomes something to chase, something higher to chase. So that's why I'm a little bit sometimes sensitive with these terms, because of course, with all the good intentions, people who are more in the spiritual practices and such, sometimes I feel like their way of expressing things can be really polarizing, like polarizing in the sense that like creating too much contrast that it becomes an object to acquire again, so you actually play the same game, but now the packaging is spirituality. So that's why I'm a bit sensitive with the wording, and as a linguist also, I think it's part of my work.
Point, and I think the audience too will appreciate to see to have this balanced out, this kind of because even like when you study a certain tradition, you learn also like their lexicon, right? And then when you express someone else, well, from what they study, it represents something else. So it's important to like balance it out. But
I definitely like agree with your what you're pointing out with the higher forces, like kind of
the lower forces as well.
Exactly, the forces of all directions unite.
So maybe to finish, I don't know, is there something that you wish I had asked you, or something that you wish that's on your heart that you wish to share, to leave the audience, or advice for the viewers? I mean, we've touched upon a lot of points, but there's last thought.
I don't have an advice really. I mean, because what is the question? So what is the advice?
I don't have an advice. I find the best advice is something that you're processing in your life, and that you've got insight because it's been something I feel like when you tap into what you're actually living right now, you realize that often a lot of people
I can't make this a reference point. It would get too much. But what is coming up is, I think that's a good advice, but it's not my advice, but it's also my advice. It's from John Keats, the poet. So what he says is truth is beauty, beauty, truth. This is all you gotta know on earth and all you know. Or it is the vice versa, all you know in the world and all you need to know. Yeah. And it's something that resonates with me so much always, because I didn't know these lines when I was, expressing the same thing in my life. And it is funny that, my spiritual teacher, when I was 16-year-old, she gave me this Sanskrit name as an initiation. And she called me Satyam Sundari. And Satyam means true or truth in Sanskrit. And Sundari means beauty. But I didn't know these lines from kids back then. But actually, she really defined my gave me the map of my path. I realized these much later. I mean, not when I was 16, of course, much later. But really, I think this is actually so simple. I feel like both truth and beauty are very simple in all their complexity still. And really getting more curious, more experimental. Yeah, more curious and experimental with our truth, with our beauty. It makes a lot of difference, I think, in, wherever we are and however we can do it through whichever tools we have. So it's good not to make things too complicated. They already a little are.
Yeah, that's good advice for the time we're going through.
Kids, for the advice.
And maybe you can leave if you want, your Instagram, your website for people if they want to reach you or work with you.
Yeah, sure. So my Instagram is Sundari Sera. The website is ritesandroses.com, but it's not really active right now. They can just see, ritesandroses.com/offers. They can see the current sessions that I'm offering. But there's also the Rites and Roses Substack, which I think is a better place because it's more up to date, that I try to write regularly. So yeah, these are the places.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Alex.
And
thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, comment, share, subscribe. It really helps the channel expand and the vision behind Rosumbra to be spread out to more people. On another note, we'll be launching in the next few weeks an open call for a grant that Rosumbra is offering that will include multiple prizes, so you won't want to miss that out. It'll be diffused through our social media platforms, so you can follow us there to have more details. And until the next full moon, I'm sending you lots of love and light. See you guys.